Hey there, Wargamers, Justin here, Painter, and today I want to talk about how you view your work. I'd like to welcome you guys back to the channel. If you are new here, thank you for tuning in. Please alpha strike that like and subscribe button, and for all you returning viewers, thank you for supporting what I do. Today I wanted to talk about how you view your work, your hobby work, and stuff like that. So I was at work and I was looking at some terrain I was working on, and it got me thinking about how I view what I'm working on. So to put you in kind of my mind space, one of the things that I struggle with is, like, if I paint a mini, I zoomed out, we'll zoom back in here. If I paint a mini and it's not up to snuff, right? I stress over it, I worry, I'm anxious, I'm not very kind to myself mentally about it, and I tend to find excuses for why this mini isn't good. Like, there could be something good, but I will find a reason it's bad, right? And I don't think this mini is necessarily bad, given the parameters I set forth on it, but I could do better, right? So, like, one of the things I have to tell myself is, okay, Justin, if you want to find a fault with your work, you will. You will always find something wrong with it. Sometimes it's hard to accept that it's okay to be proud of your work. It's okay to find something nice that you've done and see it that way, and to pat yourself on the back because you've completed a task. So changing your mental state of mind, your perspective on how you view your work, I think is important. And it's very hard to do, but I want to talk about that. So when I look at this piece, and was not very happy with it, but what were the parameters I set forth? Speed paint, quickly getting it done, using the speed paints, aiming for a tabletop standard. It did not have to be some golden demon winning thing. And when you start looking at it through the parameters that you set forth for the painting mission that you set for yourself, in this case, for painting the Stavian Battlemaster, I hit what I aimed to hit. It doesn't have to look as good as this one. That was not the mission objective. But sometimes when I look at this, it's hard to get myself into that mental headspace, right? And then when I worked on this guy, and then I came over to the Griffin came out way better in my opinion, and then it made me feel worse about the Battlemaster, right? And then I was like, well, shit, this guy's not that great. This guy's better. But I was getting more proficient with the speed paints, and that's okay. And it's okay to not hit the best mark you set every time. The important thing, I think, is to set the objectives that you want, strive for those, and then if you don't hit them, try again to do better the next time. And if you do hit them, try to do better the next time. Like, as I've told people for a long time, the only thing you can really do is to try to be a better painter today than you were yesterday, and then strive to be a better painter tomorrow than you are today. And that philosophy holds true in life. To try and be a better person today than you were yesterday, and strive to be a better person tomorrow than you were today. Try to leave the world a better place than you found it today and yesterday, and try and go into tomorrow hoping to make the world better than it was today. It's the same kind of philosophy. So, we go forward from here, and we go to the Turkina, and the overall amount of time I spent on it was more. Still trying to aim with the same speed painting kind of techniques, right? And it looks better, right? The torso on this is still good, but the legs on this Turkina are just better, But what were the parameters that were set forth, and did I hit those goals? And I think the answer would be yes. But I still have a hard time because I find faults, right? And I think that a lot of people in the painting community, this is something that they struggle with, that and imposter syndrome, and never being satisfied with their own work. Now, one of the other things that I find to be a problem when I work on minis, right, is that I finish this guy, and then, okay, he's done. Now I got to work on this guy. Okay, he's done. Now I got to work on this guy. Okay, he's done. Now I got to work on this guy, and I got to work on this guy, and I got to work on this guy, right? And all of a sudden, you start having this pile-up of minis that you look at, and when you finish one, you can't accept that you finished it. You're already moved on mentally to the next piece that you need to work on. And I find that if we take a moment and we stop looking at painting like it's a job and start trying to think of it as a release, a cathartic experience, art for art's sake, and that art is something that you can then use later to play games and enjoy gaming with other people, enjoy the social contract with someone else, enjoy rolling dice, enjoy the mechanics of the game, enjoy your art fighting against their art. You're forging a narrative of battle, and this may be the only time, if this was your Battlemaster, this is my Turkina, maybe the only time those two minis ever face themselves on the tabletop, right? And we forge that narrative, and then we go about our separate ways. We never see each other again. but our art came together to create a narrative, a story that both of us can potentially remember forever, right? So when I look at work, it is often hard because once I'm done with him, I have the next project and the next project and the next one. And taking a moment to step back and go, you know what? Hey, this is done. I did a pretty good job on that. And just acknowledge that it's finished and not finish it and immediately leave the finish line and skip the champagne, skip the celebration, and go straight to the next race. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. And what triggered me to think about this discussion today was actually not the minis. It was actually terrain. And I'll show you guys kind of what I've been working on here. You've seen some of it. So my first prototype here was... this guy here, this was my firehouse that ended up being the Ghostbuster firehouse that I didn't realize was the Ghostbusters when I found the image. And the concept was a destroyable piece of terrain, right? And I thought that this turned out really, really good. And then I finished it, and I was in a rush to get it done for the convention. And the next thing that I wanted, and that's so satisfying, it's such a good, like, firm... purchase there that it has. But I was on to the next project and the next one, and then I have a hard time, allowing myself to be excited about finishing something that I've worked on. And I went from that one to this one. It's a little bit bigger, so we'll get this out of the way. And I finished our larger kind of fire station or mechanic shop or industrial building, whatever you want this to be. I finished this, and like pops out. I've got notes for modifications that I've made, so I knew what to do. But I went from one project to the next. And I've made modifications since then. We've got more windows here because this is rather big. And when you look at the minis for scale, that's a pretty large building. To make the building, it's still large, but to make it feel a bit more in scale, we've got more windows going on. Instead of like these, so it almost looks like 3 floors, we've got more, so it looks like each floor is like 3 floors, so it's like 9 stories, which is pretty big. But it's what I tried to do to find the compromise, because I like the size for Alpha Strike, but we wanted to try and do our best to keep it in scale. The doors are a little big still, but I think that this reads better across the table, so that's why we left them. But point is, we created this, and I'm on to the next. So I did this, right? And my next project was this fella here. And there were a few iterations of this one. This was my brownstone building. It's like a residential thing. And this does have a kind of like New York or maybe San Francisco vibe. But I wanted something that had the functionality of the destroyable aspect of this. And also was kind of like, what if there was battle mechs today? Or what if some areas of Terra in 3150 still have these, and maybe because it's a sci-fi future, our brownstone buildings are much taller than they are today, because why not? Like, so I feel like much like 40k, Warhammer 40k, you can kind of have a lot of things exist in this universe. So I didn't let the scale bother me too much, but I finished this and I was like, you know what, something else. Went on to the next one, and then I got into this one, and I got into a few iterations of this one, and I was so happy with this that I had to go on to the next project. This turned out well, it's destroyable, and it looks better than the other brownstone building, and it's got an interesting facade, right? So I took that momentum, and I moved forward, and I did another thing, right? And I'll show you that. And this is going somewhere, I promise. I know I'm rambling. This is going somewhere. Let me get things out of the way. And that brought us to this building. And this needs some tweaks as well, right? But I wanted something that looked kind of like there were 2 buildings connected, a large one and a small one, so you had different play surfaces. It'll still be a ruin. You can pull this out and expose a ruin. I don't have that designed yet. And again, there's tweaks for this. There's parts that were missed. There's a whole beam here I didn't have. I'll put question marks like, Justin, what the hell? Like, you missed that? Even these bars aren't long enough. I had to extend those. But in general, I got it together. And I immediately fixed a bunch of stuff and got it going. But then I sat there, and I had a moment of reflection when I was at work, when I realized that I got this in the furthest state that I could get it in while I was at work today. There was no way that I was going to be able to do any more on it. And I sat there and I was like, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this building, I could do these tweaks, I could do blah, 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 blah. And then I sat it down and I looked at it and I was like, wow. I'm kind of running my finger across it and I'm looking at it and I kind of smile. I was like, hey, I freaking made this. I designed this thing, this building. Yesterday this was a flat vector image of lines, red and green lines that I put together, and I made this thing. And then I started thinking, I was like, what would 5-year-old me say if I walked in and with my G.I. Joes and I said, boom, Justin, here's a G.I. Joe building. Obviously a little bit bigger for G.I. Joes, but you get the hint. Or my green little toy soldiers, which I used to love when I was a kid, right? You know, I put that down and I'm like, what would younger me think? What would 14-year-old video game and Justin say if I said, hey, Justin, in 20 years, in 22 years, which is wild to me to think. That's wild to say that. In 22 years, what are you going to be doing for a living? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to join the military. Maybe I'm a cop. Maybe I'm going to go to school. I don't know. I'm going to open a hobby store. Whatever. Those are a few of the things I was interested in at the time. And up into my 20s, I would still tell you I don't know what I'm going to do in my life. I clearly didn't join the military. I didn't become a cop. I did go to business school. I didn't open a store. But it led me to my path today where I work for Death Ray Designs, and I made it a mission to try and learn to do some design work, and I have products that Death Ray sells that I made. I made this. And this is not me trying to brag. It is me taking a moment to actually realize, like, hey, you did a thing, dude. And it's a cool freaking thing, man. Even if it's not perfect, you made this. Take a moment to enjoy that. And like my AO terrain isn't amazing, but I didn't give myself a moment to reflect on that. I did it and I moved on to the next design. I rushed to the next thing, the next project, over and over, ad nauseum. This is what I've done. But I finished this today, and again, I was like running my fingers across it, and I was like, hey, that's really cool. And I was looking at the balcony area thingies, and I sat there and I reflected, and I was like, I made this physical 3D thing. I can't do carpentry. I can't work on cars. I'm not a home fixer person. I don't do any of that. But this is a thing that I had control over, and I created. And then I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, I need to do a YouTube video. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't have a beginning, middle, or end. I just need to ramble so that others who are in the same boat or struggle mentally or think the way I do, maybe think differently, but their perspectives, their mental processes get them to the same end result or same finish line. I need to put something out to connect with people. And that philosophy of taking a moment to reflect on your work and say, hey, I did this. So like I look at this dude and every time I see it, I'm like, I could do better. But you know what? I did this. I finished this. I set a mission. I made a video. I broadcast a Battletech centric hobby video into the world, onto the internet. If I died tomorrow, that video is up there until YouTube is gone, if it has ever gone. I put that out there. I made that thing. And again, I'm not trying to brag because my channel is small and this is not the best painted thing, obviously. There's, again, we will find reasons why I think it's not good enough. I'm sitting here doing it. But the point is, I did this. I completed this. I moved on, and yes, it was project to project, but I did this. I had the mission objectives. And then I sit here and think, I'm like, hey, I did paint that. That is kind of cool, right? And stop looking at it for its faults. Stop stressing over it and actually, like, take a minute to freaking enjoy the art that you've done. Because, guys, folks, time is limited. It is a precious resource. It is something that we spend it every day, whether wisely or not. And if we could, we would get more of it. We would stock our bank account with it, but we can't. It is a resource that was finite. We don't know how much of it we have, and it's the most valuable resource possible. And we spend that every day. How are you spending your time? How do you reflect? And if you're spending time stressing or worrying or going from project to project without allowing yourself to enjoy the fruits of your labor, you're wasting your time. You're spending it unwisely. Finish these and enjoy them. Enjoy the process from going from A to Z on this mini. And you know what? If you don't nail it, you still finished it. You knocked it out of the park, guys. Like, you got that done. Do better on the next one. And I think changing the mental perspective, our focus is important. And that's kind of what I want to drive home, is that when you do stuff, if you get anything from this channel, is that A, I want you to be happy. I want you to roll dice and paint minis. I guess that's 3 things. But more importantly, I want you to find solace, comfort, enjoyment out of the hobby. That's why I tell people, enjoy their painting and try your best. Don't compare yourself to others. And that's also why I tell people, when you sit down to game, remember that for you to roll dice to blow up someone's tiny little toy soldiers, that person's got to agree to roll dice to blow up your tiny little toy soldiers, right? Spend that time wisely. If you get halfway through that game and you or your opponent are already thinking about the next game because this one's done, it's worthless, it's pointless, and you're focused on the next one and the next one, you're missing the point. If you're already in the middle of this game and you're already looking forward to the end so you can get on to the next one, why are you even continuing in this one? Find out who's going to be the winner, call it, and move on, because you're spending that time in such a way that you're not maximizing its value, because you can't get it back. And that's why I tell people, when you game, like, have a good time and make sure that other person has a good time. When you hobby, make sure you take a moment to reflect. Enjoy what you've done. Don't rush. Like, I'm going to say this, you got plenty of time. We don't. Time is fleeting. But when you're using that time, make sure you use it wisely. And when you get to a project's end, take a moment to reflect. Be kind. Don't always look for your faults. And don't be so eager to rush into the next project that you don't enjoy what you're doing anymore, that you burn yourself out. That is probably the key thing to take away from this video, is that be kind to yourself and don't burn yourself out. And I can tell you, from going from project to project to project, from video to video to video, if you don't stop and take a moment to enjoy it and just look at it and go, hey, I made this. This is cool. This is cool. You will burn yourself out. And then if you burn yourself out and you stop painting, all those things you did were for naught. You got to this point, you got to the skill level, you got to proficiency, and then you quit because you're burned out. You don't enjoy it anymore. Well, maybe you don't enjoy it because you don't let yourself enjoy it. So change your perspective. Try, when you're working on stuff, to give yourself that reprieve, that break at the end, to pop that mental champagne bottle and say, I crossed that finish line. It doesn't matter if you feel like you crossed first or last. You finished that freaking race. Be proud of what you've done. Enjoy that. Get your hobby on and roll some dice. That said, folks, I think that is a natural stopping point for today's ramble. I wasn't sure where it was going to go. I'm not sure if it's going to motivate you guys, but it's something I wanted to get out because I had that moment at work today where I literally just stopped for I kid you not, like 10 minutes. I looked at this and I just sat there. It was quiet. We had an hour left in the shift. My boss was working on stuff, and I had the 3D printers were winding down, and I was just like, do, 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 do. And then my mind shifted into, you did this. How cool is that? Could it be better? Sure. But you made a freaking cool toy, Justin. How badass is that? Appreciate it. Don't get lost in the everyday grind. Don't get lost in the rush to go to the next thing, that you don't stop to enjoy it. And it was a nice moment. It gave me a little bit of perspective, and it helps keep me motivated to do what I'm doing here. That said, if you guys enjoy this, you know what to do. Alpha strike that like button. Get your fingers ready to type in the comments and let me know if this helped you, or if you have some mental gymnastics you do to help get yourself motivated to do stuff and help get you through. Share those with us. Let's get a conversation going. And as always, folks, keep rolling those dice, keep painting your models, and I will catch you guys next time. If you guys are still sitting here watching this, let's take a moment to put a pop-up here to showcase those wonderful Patreon supporters here. We'll let that scroll here, and thank you so much for supporting what I do. That's super awesome. I really do appreciate that.